Are we set? Ready? Filming? So we're very glad to have you all with us today at the Global Entrepreneurship Network Congress. We're partners. We're very proud to be so. We collaborate strongly in fomenting and fostering entrepreneurship incubators and accelerators in Puerto Rico and all over the U.S. We have experts on the field on our board. Please have a seat wherever you feel comfortable. And in doing so, we have great partners, people with a lot of experience, a lot of good energy, good vibes that bring a lot of experience to the table. Again, I must emphasize that because that's the fact. And we're proud to have, along with our members and panelists today, one of our friends that asked us to collaborate, Chiqui Santos Iris. She was former Undersecretary of the Economic Development Department of Puerto Rico. And she has a great event that she's put together with Alma Iris, taking place October 7th through the 10th, that I would like her to speak about it before we start our official presentation. So, Chiqui, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon. It's great to be here. And I'm honored to have the floor. What we're doing, right, and our intention and motivation is in the Department of Economic Development with federal funding, there's an activity that it's done about 4 times a year in which we have a mission of entrepreneur that go from the island to different countries. So we've done this in Spain, Colombia, we're going back to Colombia, Panama, Mexico, the United States. And one of the things that always called my attention is that we don't have enough funding to bring all of the entrepreneurs that are interested in exporting their products. So we've received input and a request from local entrepreneurs and from entrepreneurs from other countries that would like to be able to have that opportunity of exchanging, that commercial exchange. So we decided that it would be great if we could do a reverse mission, right, in which we invite those countries and their entrepreneurs to come to Puerto Rico, and we invite our own locals and provide the environment for that exchange to occur. We want to tie it up, marry that with information about how to do business in the different countries that are going to be invited and how to do business in Puerto Rico. So what does it take for you to establish yourselves in Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico is a part of the United States. Therefore, we are that bridge to the United States. So if you want to, you're in Latin America, Central America, and you want to do business in the States, this is the path forward to do that. Because everything that has a made in Puerto Rico is made in the U.S. And therefore, we're this punta de lanza, as I call it, to extend your business into Central and Latin America. And that's the intention. So we're putting together this event, and as Jose Luis said, it's going to be taking place in Rio Mar. It's a beautiful hotel. It's in the east coast of the island, on the east side of the island. We want to marry that also. Tourism is also sponsoring us. Therefore, there's going to be activities that actually can expose what our culture is to our guests. So those countries that are coming here, it's not only about how we do business, but who are we? You know, how do you interact with the locals? What are our values? What's our culture? And it's going to be an experience that not only enables that commercial exchange, but also allows you to understand the idiosyncrasia of the different countries plus the island of Puerto Rico. So that's basically what we're doing.
Which countries were invited?
So we are extending invitations to Colombia, to Spain, to Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Panama. Did I say Mexico? No, and Mexico. Those are the ones that Costa Rica I did mention, right?
Okay.
Yes.
And please stay with us on the panel here.
Oh, no.
Because you can react to some of our, well, from wherever you feel comfortable.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Chiqui. That was useful for everyone in the audience and in our panel. We'd like to make the most out of it for benefit of Puerto Rico and everybody else participating. To introduce myself very briefly, I'm the chairman founder of the PRUSA Chamber of Commerce. What we do is we unite 9 million Puerto Ricans in economic development projects and programs, and in doing so, we break molds, we change paradigms, we do a lot of things that other chambers don't do for many reasons, perhaps because they can't, or perhaps it's not within the realm of what they are more able to work with. We can because we have done it. We've already started this network of chambers in Florida, which are the godfathers, so to speak, and mentors of this organization. And then we united Puerto Rico along with South Carolina and New York, which are strongholds, but we operate in other areas as well. And we've developed a way to make things work that in the past was attempted. Some of the people here tried it, in fact. It wasn't easy to keep, you first had to start, but then you have to keep them together, work together, be productive, and stay together. And that's now 3 years going. We learned from people like Luis Torrellón that was telling me his experiences when he was in New York. And then Vilma Colon was telling me how she tried before and how it just didn't work because there's different idiosyncrasies. The mentality of a Puerto Rican in New York is not the same as the Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico. There's preconceived ideas from there and here of things that are not necessarily true, and others may be, but create problem in communications and collaborations. We're able to circumvent all that, jump all those hurdles, and make it work. And that's why we're here to share with you things that could be also implemented in other chambers and other countries that may prove useful. So about deliverables, being the title, excuse me a minute, let me read you the exact title. So, building bridges to global markets, the role of chambers of commerce. That is the title of this activity, but what are the deliverables that we want to achieve today? And that is to communicate how we could be instrumental in fostering a conducive environment for business growth and entrepreneurship, both locally and internationally. In the session, we will learn innovative approaches to business acceleration and mentorship, and Yolanda already experienced some of that when we were in Orlando, can tell you about it. And they've been in acceleration programs themselves. They're part of the Bravo, right? We started with the Bravo group before they created Murmurato, that she can talk to you about it. And how to create and join incubators and accelerators, interstate and international networks that we've developed with our different chambers. How chambers of commerce can contribute to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. How we work with Colmena, with the Charpalante. One of our members on our board was chairman of the Incubators and Accelerators Association of America, and they won the best operation in 2013 of all chambers in the U.S., of all incubators and accelerators in the U.S., and he's part of our chamber. Tom O'Neill with University of Central Florida. So new approaches to board composition, including DEI applications, academic inclusion, and research centers. In a nutshell, we have all the Puerto Rican research centers in the States as part of our organization, and we incorporate people from academia into our board. Luis, in fact, was vice president of the University of Puerto Rico, but we also have several professors and key people from Interamericana. Ana Jiménez, Tito, in fact, was involved with Ana Jiménez, so was Oscar. And Interamericana is one of our partners as well, Interamerican University. And UPR has, Arlene Hernandez is one of our board members. Most chambers, you don't see professors in chambers of commerce, that's a fact. And you don't see research centers either. So what we do is we incorporate all that information they have from diaspora, behavior, social trends, in fact, migration patterns they've studied. So now a survey was done here in Puerto Rico, but that's a different scope. A survey is asking you questions. The sociologists study the patterns and why they happen and what are the projections and the forecasts of what can happen eventually. So it's a different scope and a different perspective. We're bringing that to our big event on the 18th and 19th of November. We're going to have for the first time the Conference of Puerto Rican Organizations through the U.S. mainland and Puerto Rico talking about good governance practices, best practices in housing, security, health, particularly economic development. Within that, tourism, Puerto Rico and Cuba, threats and opportunities. We must know, we must deal with that, because they could be friends and collaborators, but they're also competitors. So we have to see where we can complement, where we can compete, and how. There's a lot to be learned from the Dominican Republic. Puerto Rico has 16,000 rooms. Dominican Republic has 104,000 rooms, hotel rooms, that is. And Cuba has 74,000. So we clearly are in competition. We may be at different price points, but now to give you an example, Dominican Republic established a new project, Punta Bergantin, which has rooms at $250 to $400 a night, and they are directed at the East Coast of the United States. So this is exactly the market Puerto Rico appeals to. Even though we're friends, we need to know these things so we can prepare properly, and that's kind of the things that happen when Luis Torrejon Parr brings the opportunity to us. Listen, guys, there's Puerto Plata wants to do something with chambers. I think you guys move fast and are very dynamic compared to other organizations. So he brought the opportunity to us. We took it on. We went to Puerto Plata, and in just a few months, we were able to get a new route. And I don't think I've heard of many chambers doing that kind of thing. It's not in the nature of their the kind of things they do normally. So we created a new route from Puerto Plata to Puerto Rico. And a lot of people could think, well, you're developing tourism for the Dominican Republic then, because not many from the Dominican Republic are going to come to Puerto Rico. But the fact is, when we do the research, that travelers from the US are going inbound to the Dominican Republic to the cruise liners to take a cruise. Now they're coming from the US to Puerto Rico, and they're doing tourism before and after. So that is one of the things we did. Then we're also helping them with incubators and accelerator programs. We already started with that. We sent them proposals that have been discussed and negotiated. And then a campus of a local university that may be open up there as well. So that's kind of a few of the things, and we want to share some others with their experiences specific and to some of these that we just mentioned. So how chambers can foster economic development, education, and business networks. A quick example that they will react to is we created the first course on economic development of Puerto Rico. The International Economic Development Council in DC has a very good course on economic development, which is not the same as public administration or economics that most people study that work in this field. Rather specific to economic development, there are a few courses in the world. One of them is the IEDCs, and then they're collaborating with about 3 universities in the mainland that provide the course. But the problem is it's in English, it's not specific to Puerto Rico, and it's much more expensive. So we created a program, and these are not easy things to do, and you don't make a whole lot of money on these things. We're actually sponsoring it with Inter-American, putting a lot of time and effort. So we created this course, 15 hours, certified, 6 modules, and it's geared to municipal employees that deal with economic development, which in some municipios or cities in Puerto Rico here, they call it federal programs, others call them planning. There's different terms for it. And there are others that call it economic development as such. But the fact is, many of these people had never worked in economic development before, and many of the cities don't have a single person to any of these responsibilities, not even federal funding or what have you, which is not just, it's just one of the components of economic development. Federal funding is a lot easier than the real economic development, which is to bring value to investors generated within your area, meaning from engineers that you graduate or from infrastructure that you create in your area to attract the investors. So when the investors come to these municipios, they have to be told the things they want to hear, and they must have the programs to substantiate that, the reality, the construction, the structure. So while we were discussing these matters with the mayors, we also found out that there is not a database of economic development persons in each city or municipio. So we took on the task of creating that database, which in fact Oscar helped us with that, because he has 12 municipios in Inteco, which is the consortium that does economic development for the area. So we connected, and that's one good thing that I'm very proud that works for us, connecting the dots. So we connected with him, he has 12, he gave us a lot of input and feedback as to the study, the course, and about how they could collaborate, which they are already. we brought him on board. It actually helped that he knows a lot of our people, and we know about their program, and had done some homework, and it works very well, by the way, economic development in Caguas and in Teco. And then we reached out to the Southern Economic Development District in the South, which is part of the Titin Foundation initiative. They got qualified with the Economic Development Administration and Department of Commerce of the US to receive funds, but they haven't yet. A lot of people think they have $500,000 or whatever, but they haven't actually received a penny yet. They're being subsidized by Titin Foundation, but they were very clever to see a lot of value in this study that we created, or this course, and they said, this is magnificent. This goes right straight into our first and foremost priority, which is education, capacitación. We need to have these municipios or small towns and cities equipped to handle economic development, which they're not, and our first and foremost priority on our board meeting was training, making them equipped to the task. So now they just confirmed, I got the email today, they just confirmed they now have 18 persons that are going to be registered. It's being funded by Titin Foundation and Southern Economic Development District. That's great group, because we're struggling to get one. We already have one, by the way, registered and paid for, and started with Inteco. That was the first one. But now she confirmed to us there's 18. I knew they were coming and asked me for the invoice, so it's happening. It's good news. And now I would like for Oscar to tell you a little bit of his reactions and his information. But before I do that, I must present our panelists, which we're very proud of to count them as friends and members of our advisory board and co-founders, many of them. And that way you know what you can ask them, but also what you can get from them eventually through your future relationships. And we're very proud to have them. We'd like to also hear from the audience, who do you represent, what's your name, and so on. Starting with Luis Torrellón-Par, former president of the Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce, former president of the Certified Public Accountants of Puerto Rico, former vice president of the board of directors of UPR, a lot of experience in new business, experience in New York, experience in building bridges with other Puerto Rican enclaves in the mainland, and a great source of information, not only historical, but also with the right amount of criteria to put it in perspective and make it work. So Luis, if you can just, is there a microphone you got? Okay. Please introduce yourself. Beyond that. Ahí está. Está ahí.
I think that you just say it, no? Just to add that I was vice chair of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
That's an important one.
Then let's go with Ramon. No?
That role is very important because he brought to Puerto Rico, I'm very, very proud, and we thank you again. I must, whenever I remember, he brought to Puerto Rico the first conference of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which now accounts for about 280 chambers through the nation. And that was a great project to expose Puerto Rico to opportunities and bring business people here.
That was 2007.
And vice chairman of the organization, which leads to Elliot Rivera, who was president of the Centro Unido de Detallistas, which has 5,000 members, is our strongest ally in PRUSAC, and founding member Ramon Barquin, who's now incoming president of the Centro Unido de Detallistas United Retailer Association, which is actually also a member of the USACC as we are, but brings a lot of power to our group.
And later, I think you are just introducing the importance of the institution, the associations of the private sector, like the chambers of commerce. Really, there is a diamond that we have to strengthen and take the opportunity within the chambers, as you are doing with the PR USA Chamber of Commerce.
Gracias.
I was also introduced, so I'll follow the act.
Also in cybersecurity, Atlantic University and American Military Academy.
Ramon Barquin.
Y Rice, si tú le explicas. Sí, lo mencioné, Atlantic University.
A group of companies, non-profits, for-profits, boards, and so forth, along the east coast of the United States and in Puerto Rico.
You have a strong operation in Miami and DC, right?
And I also had Atlantic University, which is leading science, arts, and technology university in the region. Think of Full Sail in the Caribbean. Anyway, Centro Unido de Tallistas, which is a hat that I'm wearing today, with PROSA as the uniting chambers of commerce under one roof, which is the almost 10 million Puerto Ricans throughout the United States, which we aim the micro, the small, and the medium, and the large enterprise to unite in one single effort, which is social economic development.
Before you move to Gustavo, Ramon, please tell us about RISE, the new initiative you just launched, the nonprofit of nonprofits.
Yep. Puerto Rico was the first territory, or outside of the United States, continental United States, that was awarded along with the donation from the Martin family under the Instituto de Formación Democrática that does the mock elections in all the nation with 76 million students. But a new program is the first incubator and accelerator for the nonprofit sector. The Department of Commerce and EDA, or EDA under DOC, had the task for Puerto Rico under the recovery to, one, build capacity under the nonprofits to make sure that they can open, develop, and close programs with federal funds. Second, the Blue Economy, which I also chair under Blue Tide, the board of directors. And three, the Economic Development District on the southern side of the island, which I also was able to get a letter of concurrence and they certified. So RISE, the Recovery Innovation Coordinator and Center of Excellence, is the first of its kind outside of the continental United States, and it's an incubator, an accelerator for the nonprofits.
And before we start with Gustavo, I'd like just to add that our organization has 300,000 followers in our digital base, which a lot of chambers don't have because they don't do that. But we have a collaboration with a private entity that gives their services for free as courtesy. So whenever the Centro Unido de Tallistas, United Retailers, has an event, we publish it through our network, which covers all of the US and Puerto Rico, 300,000 followers. We have an economic development program show on Saturdays with Tito for about 8 years now, going where we highlight nonprofits, what they do, how they benefit the community. And we also talk about new economic development programs. That's on Saturday. Monday through Friday, we have Noticia Boricuas, where we talk about role models in the Puerto Rican community and the calendar of events coming up, as well as basic news of our community. A lot of things that a lot of people don't know that are happening out there that are worth sharing and could be a great resource. So that's the way we communicate. Aside from our website, you're welcome to check it out, prusachambercommerce.com. Now, Gustavo is one of our key members. He happens to have a lot of common ground here because he works with new funding for organizations and the CDFIs, you call them? CDFIs, Certified Savings, what's the name?
Certified Financial, Community Financial Development Institution.
Community Financial Development, CF, Community Financial Development, CDFD Development Organizations? Corporations.
Community Development Financial
Institutions. So he does that, he can tell you more about it. And he's also with the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, which is a key member, founding member. Evelyn Lugo is the president. So tell us a little bit about how is it that you connect the dots with the savings organization, angel investment on new projects, and incubators, accelerators, what levels you work with? Go ahead.
Yeah, so Gustavo Nieves, professionally, I'm a CPA by background and have been as an operator for the last almost 20 years in advertising and in CPA firms and built a holding company. And now I spend most of my time building a private equity firm where we're investing in lower middle market deals across the US, Latino-backed teams, across a pretty broad swath of sectors. So most of my time is spent looking for deals, investors across the region, Puerto Rico, mostly in the US. So professionally, that's kind of my tie to the finance world. We invest across, like I said, mostly the lower middle markets across a pretty wide sector base. On the nonprofit side, I've spent better part of the last 15 years as the government affairs director for the South Carolina Hispanic Chamber, mostly building advocacy programs, obviously government affairs activities, platforms for the Hispanic Chamber, mostly at the state and federal level. And as a chamber where we spend most of our time and activities on the technical assistance side, I've designed for them most of the technical assistance direct programs that they provide today. I've probably taught several thousand Hispanic entrepreneurs in South Carolina on everything from forming their business to finance and marketing and operations. So I was able to help design the program with the chamber, first of its kind in Spanish, delivered in Spanish. So that's mostly my chamber hat for the last 15 years. And I do have had the opportunity to, because of my exposure to finance, have a pretty long exposure to the CDFI world. If you're unfamiliar, community development financial institutions are all across the U.S. And Puerto Rico. CDCs, so community development corporations, are the other kind of flavor, mostly around affordable housing preservation and investment. And I've been in this space for 10 years. I've helped start credit unions. And now incoming chair of the largest fund in South Carolina, where we're responsible for the affordable housing preservation interstate, dealing with issues associated with predatory lending and creating wealth in Black and brown communities throughout the state. So pretty big passion project for me, in addition to the intersections with private equity that I get to have a hand in, and of course the chamber work that I do, helping organizations like the Hispanic Chamber, PUSAC, build opportunities for wealth and for entrepreneurship across the region for entrepreneurs.
And before we move to Yolanda, very quickly, the kind of companies your group acquires or invests on are ad agencies?
Yeah, so professional services, I do have several deals in manufacturing right now. Mostly $1 million or so in EBITDA is what we look at. Opportunities for synergies, and
he gives a commission if you bring him a good investor that wants to join the investment group.
Yeah, hey, let's talk. Okay. Always looking for opportunities and check writers. But yeah, we look for cash flowing companies. I've done quite a bit of early stage venture capital investing. I probably should mention that. Through a fund that I started several years ago. That was my first.
It has like a Latino focus to
yeah,
it, right?
It's also Latino-backed companies. We invested in pre-seed to Series A companies across the U.S. Had opportunities to partner up with some great Latino-owned funds in the U.S. And it's a great space. It's just that right now I'm building out the lower middle market deal space right now. And have had quite a bit of opportunities in that space.
Perfect,
so,
excellent.
Yeah.
And then we go to Yolanda Lasalle. She heads a group, and this is how I got to connect with her. I felt we needed more women on our board because we believe in diversity, inclusion, equity, and all of that. We apply it. So I saw this article where this lady had some serious achievements in North Carolina expanding. I'm thinking, well, this is what we do. We show our people some access, contact points of where they may be interested in expanding, and have our friends and colleagues show them the ropes of how to get into the marketplace. So she was already in North Carolina. I thought maybe she'd like to expand, which in fact they're considering other countries and other states. And in fact, South Carolina, which is right next, they started a conversation today about that. So Yolanda also has a special application that works for companies with David. And you can tell us about it, Yolanda.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to be here. I'm a chemical engineer by background, so I'm kind of a fish out of the water. I started LaSalle Group after being in the industry in the manufacturing sector for about 30 years. And I decided to make a change in every organization and how we were able to transform organizations to become high-performance organizations and more productive. And I decided that that was a right pivot in my career. So 14 years ago, I started by myself, working with companies and saving significant amount of money to our clients. And right now, a couple of years ago, we started to work in the United States, and we opened an office in North Carolina. And we continue business in Puerto Rico, helping organizations become more productive and working with the culture piece or on the business side, and also digital transformation. And one of the things that it's a passion to me and my team that has grown to be more than almost 30 people is to help people become better in what they do. And that passion has come across to what is La Salle Academia. It's a part of our business to develop people in the workplace and make sure that they are not getting only what is the theory. We focus on how do you put in practice what you learn. So that's one thing that we're really passionate about. We work with a federal grant through PR Tech, and we are so fortunate to be working with students and working with unemployed people and also people inside the workflow, the workplace, and make sure that they are successful. And here with me is David. David leads the technology piece of LaSalle Group. We are very fortunate to, by working with different companies, we find out that what we do, we can accelerate with a software that enables, it's a workflow automation that enables to collect all the input and the feedback and those business opportunities and transform them into a business benefit. But more than becoming a business benefit, it's how do you recognize people that are contributing to the success of your business. So that's Murmurato. We launched it. We have clients in Puerto Rico and United States, and we are very fortunate to be able to see how it's impacting the culture of the organizations and how it's getting the benefits for the employee and for the employer.
And if I may summarize, it's a way to get input, anonymous input, so you don't know who gave it, and then you give them rewards, not because they're your friend, but because it was a great idea, right? And then also I'd like to know about your key clients, because it's a prestigious roster.
Yes, we are very fortunate to have like 80% of our volume are Fortune 500 companies. We don't limit ourselves to companies like Merck and others that we are working at a global level. But we also believe in the power of giving back. So we work with local companies in Puerto Rico as well to help them succeed. And that's how we ended up being part of the board in PRUSAC, because we believe that first, women have to represent, have representation in these forums, but also how you can contribute to the success of others, and you make connections, and you help grow the business in every country that you are in, and also in Puerto Rico.
I'd like to give some examples because it has to do with what we want to convey. 70% of our clients are blue chip multinationals, big pharma, many of them, Bacardi and so on. So some of the examples is she helped us with the first event, the Hispanic, we call them Hispanic Heritage Awards, first event where we recognize high school students at senior year for their academic achievements as well as in sports and entrepreneurship. And this was the first time it was ever done in Puerto Rico for the public system. It was done for private schools every year, a lot of sponsors, but nobody cared about the public school system in doing so. That's what the education department told us. So Yolanda helped us out, so did Tito that attended, and we had a few other sponsors. Luckily, at the very end, we got some sponsors to be able to give out food and have a bit of music. So we got churches, and we got Inter-American University, helped us with the facilities. So those are different things we do that are important for society. Normally chambers don't get into that because they're more into the lobbying or the profit making, which is very valid, very important for economic development. But we feel we have to have social development as part of it. Another thing I may suggest to you all to consider, the Aspen Ideas Festival. It's a similar thing to what we're doing in November. People come out there with great ideas about good governance and how to make things better, not just business-wise. So that's kind of similar to what we're doing in November, to give an idea. The Aspen Ideas Festival, it's a great place where big thinkers with great new ways to do things, join and meet and talk. So back to Yolanda, you participated in the Heritage Awards. She also attended the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce event in Orlando. And in Orlando, we brought them to Gabe Ruiz. Gabe Ruiz is a great mentor. Every 3 months, he can meet with different CEOs to give them feedback and advice into how to become more effective and profitable in working federal contracting with 8A certifications, veterans, minorities, women, handicap, and so on. He started his own company, and 17 years later sold it for about $25 million, I believe it was. And Gabe is a quiet Puerto Rican guy that nobody knows. But we know him, and we brought our friends over to the table, and now he's willing to advise them as a mentor. So that's kind of things we do in helping our people grow. Did you enjoy the opportunity in Orlando and meeting Gabe?
Definitely, it was a great experience and very inspiring, because it was not only that you have access to people that normally you don't you make connections, but also the conference provide speakers that talk about how to make sure that Hispanics are there in the business and are able to develop their companies to become successful companies as well.
Actually, gave a lot of important feedback to Santo Arroyo from the network of chambers in Florida, who he hadn't met. They hadn't met each other. And he has a group of engineers, so does Yolanda, is industrial engineers and psychologists in defining how to make companies better, more productive, and so on. So the different angles, but they were able to collaborate. And now we brought a cybersecurity and smart cities expert, Urayoan Camacho, and he felt also he was getting a lot of important information as well. And then we have with us, next to Yolanda, Jessica Cavazos, who was with the Minority Development Centers, Minority Business Development Centers, right?
MBDA.
As Deputy Undersecretary. After that, she worked at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as Vice President in care of Chambers Relations. And that's how we met. And she was helping us with information on how to make the most out of it, being part of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber. And now she's advising us, part of our organization, in relations with chambers and providing services that she can tell you more about to chambers to be more effective.
Thank you so much, Jose Luis. It is an honor to be here, especially with having such a high caliber of panelists that I've intersected both in government and as Vice President of Chamber Relations with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber and as Deputy Undersecretary for the Biden administration. I think it's my trajectory is about making chambers optimal. And so we're now I'm out of government. My partner and I, Temo Chopin, who's in the audience, started a company called Neuro República. And it is to help chambers not only have a platform for equity advancement in the space of economic advancement for Latinos in the United States. I think it's really important to not only highlight the caliber of leaders and get them at the table at the national level. And so it is our goal not only to amplify the panelists and their organizations and what they're doing, but also create access for Latinos in underrepresented communities. So I'm from Wisconsin, right? And
it's important to highlight that your chamber, when you were president, was recognized as the best chamber in the nation, right?
Right.
And
So when I started in 2016, and with a new baby that was like a month old, our chamber was about 150 members. It was in central Wisconsin, which is in Madison, Wisconsin, and we had a budget about $150,000. So they said, Jessica, you and 3 others have to split that, and we got to figure out how you're going to make impact in the community, right? Being in Wisconsin, where the population is, in its entirety, is about 680,000 Latinos. 70% of that are of Mexican origin, and then 15% of that are of Puerto Rican origin, which is growing. That was like from the last census. It was challenging, right? You know, you're trying to create impact. You're trying to make sure.
And what did your chamber do to make it so good?
So, you know, my previous position was, you know, as president of the Volusia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Florida, which is a whole different experience. But before that, it was working on policy issues for Congresswoman Moore in Wisconsin. So, you know, the policy kind of connected with me on economic issues as far as it pertains to access. So the main thing with the chamber is that, you know, I talk to you about like how I started, which, you know, my husband and I, Thamo, who's right, he's recording me, he became a consultant, and that was, you know, I was trying to keep the nepotism away, but he was the best one for the job. But
so he's part of the success too.
He's part of the success story. So I just want to say that it was a family affair, and as Latinos, I think we accept that, right? We want it to be an experience that is going to be both impactful for everybody.
But your chamber was recognized for being extremely good, and
so
you being humble.
There you go.
Yeah,
at the end, when I left, the chamber had 800 members in the state of Wisconsin. Good. It had a budget of $6 million. And
that's big for a chamber. Let me tell you, that's serious money.
From 1.5 employees that when I started, there were about 17 at the time. Wow. So, you know, we grew the chamber in Wisconsin, and what our story is that with the right ecosystem and the right network, you can grow a chamber like that anywhere. You can, if you can do it in Wisconsin, where there's a minimal amount of support, where you have to really sell the Latino story and the Latino politics.
And what kind of unusual connections did you make beyond the ones that chambers normally do?
So, you know, I believe in private-public partnerships. I mean, that is like the thing that I believed in the most. I allied with, you know, our governor, our local, you know, municipalities, and those ecosystems that don't understand Latinos, and I started teaching them about the narrative. You know, I didn't want them to come up with what they read or what they see in the news. I taught them that Latinos are imperative to our economy, and how they should be part of the story. And the story is funding. So, you know, when funding comes around, if you have a budget, if the state budget is 180 million or a trillion, I don't know what the state budget was, that we deserve a percentage, and it should be invested into the ecosystem as far as incubator, accelerators, and programs, right? And that chambers are imperative to the story. You know, I think working in the administration, I know that chambers in the future are going to go through a renaissance, and they're going to be seen as a pipeline to economic equity. And so economic equity meaning what he does and what everyone here does as far as accelerator programs, networks, what you do very well, open the global market, and also exposing entrepreneurs, Latino entrepreneurs, to new industries. And right now, one of the main things that I think, you know, chambers should concentrate is how do you get that, you know, the tech into our communities? How do you make people qualified to become vendors? And, you know, we have Olga here with Ola Consulting, and she is in Tampa, but she is like a supplier diversity educator. She teaches our businesses how to access federal funding. And those are things that I think sometimes we forget that we, as Latinos, should have access to. We should be able to qualify for $1 million, plus contracts through the federal government. And but we sometimes, we don't have access to that. Only 2% of Hispanics qualify.
And 70% of new businesses are now led by Hispanics. That's a history at the moment in the U.S. I'd like to hear your feedback. So we started a program with the Spanish Chamber of Commerce when I was just joining, which has worked very well, and we do now in PRUSAC. It's protocolary visits. Not a lot of chambers do that, but it's extremely important. So we seek a meeting with the president of the Government Development Bank. We went there, and it was very productive to hear about all their programs, to let him know what is it that we do and how we can help them. It's very important. So before we went there, we did our homework in finding out what value are we bringing to the table to the president of the Government Development Bank. He had his whole staff, about 10, 12 people, you know him well, Tito and so on. So it's a very productive meeting. He's very enthused and he's very collaborative and he's ready to work with us. And we did in New York. When we went to New York with an entourage from our chamber and from all over the U.S., he was there with us as one of the keynote speakers. And there was a good flow of collaborative attitude, but also programs that we've already worked together. In fact, they're endorsing our course, our course on economic development. So that's how you connect the dots. You visit them, you let them know what is it we do, how we can help them, but think very carefully, what am I going to bring to this guy so he falls in love with us and we show him love back. So that kind of thing is very important. Protocolary visits we do with the governors, with the mayors. So far, we're pretty new kids on the block. With this new chamber, we just started. But that's something that you may want to consider. So when we visited in New York, we met the mayor, we presented our programs, we had 3 keynote speaker opportunities to present what is it we do and invite them over to Puerto Rico. We were able to also connect, Tito and I had met with the president of SOMOS, the Hispanic elected officials, mostly Puerto Ricans in New York, now accounts for all Hispanics really, but mostly Puerto Ricans. So we met with the president a year before. Not much happened then, but when we met with Nick, who you knew very well, I asked Luis, I said, Luis, do you know from your days in New York, Nick Lugo, I've heard good things about him. We're careful to nurture our organization's wealth of resources, choosing the right people, because if not, you waste a lot of time arguing and gossip, which is kind of common in Hispanic world. So Luis gives me the rap on Nick, and they say, okay, Luis, can we call Nick? And I want you to open the door for us. And then Tito had met him before, so we called with Tito, and got the thing going in the right scope. Well, we went there to New York, we had a splash. We made a big impact of our presence. We were given a big recognition also, which kind of helped. And met the mayor, met everybody that we needed to meet, and now we're developing programs for new products to be launched with the Association of Bodegas, which accounts for 12,000. I think you know who they are, right? Marte and those folks. So we are going to open up doors for even people from Panama that were in Puerto Rico recently to be able to get them distribution in New York. So that's how we bring actual food to the table, not just seminars on health or insurance or what have you. So specific appointments, we get specific appointments. We have another member that wanted to open up operations with hospitals in digital marketing to Hispanics in hospitals and clinics and health organizations. So we get them the appointment with the hospital. We may get a fee for getting such appointments. That's how we work a financial program with them to make it work for them and for us. And then if the contract materializes, we also get an incentive for the chamber or whoever's doing the work. So that's unusual things we do because appointments are important, business contracts are important. We just don't want to talk and train and educate. We also want to make things happen.
And one thing that
go ahead. Microphone.
The most important thing of the Chamber of Commerce is not the social activities. That's are okay, and that's part of the network, but it's to open doors with the government officials, with capital, with a lot of things like Jessica did it. I am sure that from 1 to 800 or whatever is because you give an added value to the member. When I was chairman of Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce, we had, I think was 1,200, and at the end of my year was 2,100 or 200.
400 now?
And was about 2,200. Before was around 1,200. Then the question was, how you did it? No, I don't did it. It's because if you give productive work for the members, they will come in
And bring their friends.
and bring. If you just have social activity or whatever, you are dead. And that is one of the things that are important in this type of association, like we are doing the PRUSA.
Thank you. Now we're moving to Tito, but it's so clever what he said, and we enjoyed his experience. We share views. That's where we're together. In our board, we have highly experienced people with different ideologies. It's important to have. We have a balance on parties. It's also very important. A lot of elected officials with people with contacts in New York and in Washington, D.C. and in Florida. We helped create the network of chambers in Florida, which serve as a basis, as I was saying earlier, godfathers, mentors to this organization. But Tito is very good to the table because he's the Dean of Economic Development worldwide, probably. At the time, his tenure, Puerto Rico led economic development in the world, along with Japan, ahead of all of Europe, Latin America, and even Asia, except for Japan. So those were the golden days, and he has good connections with other countries when he was Secretary of State, Secretary of Economic Development, but also Congressman, and then led an organization in Washington dealing with Latin America, Central America, in developing business opportunities for American companies and working with LANCHAM, AmCham, American Chambers of Commerce in these countries. We joined together as friends first, and then business, and then in the Spanish Chamber of Commerce. And now, when Tito immediately said yes, he was ready to join us, I'd like for him to give you, first of all, an overview of what other experience they may have related to our subjects today, but also how he finds what we do productive. Tito.
Well,
Tito Colorado.
as this was supposed to be an introduction of each one of us, you know, and the name of the program is Building Bridges to Global Market. I'm just going to do something that I've never done before. I'm introducing myself. So I want you later to ask questions, obviously, about the issues that we are concerned with and with global bridges, for building global bridges. But, so I'm going to mention just some of the organizations that I have been a member of the board. So it will give you an idea. Obviously, it doesn't include what we did in China, in Japan, in Korea, Taiwan. But basically, I'm going to mention some of the companies, chambers, organizations that I have been a member of their board. First one, and there's no relationship, you know, in the order of dates or anything like that. I was a member of the board of the Caribbean Hotel Tourism Association, which is the private sector organization for the Caribbean. I was a member also of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, which is the government's organization for the Caribbean, that includes all of the islands in the Caribbean. I was a member of the Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce Board. I was a member of the Manufacturers Association Board, of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce. I'm still been member for 22 years. Caribbean Central American Action Board, which was an organization in Washington, had been created by people like David Rockefeller to help the Caribbean and Central America. In Puerto Rico, I was a member of the board of Phillips Petroleum when they had their operation here in Puerto Rico. Was in the area of education. I was a member of the board and chairman of Ana G. Mendez University, which is one of the largest private universities in Puerto Rico. In Jamaica, I was a member of the board of Life of Jamaica Insurance Company, which was or is still the largest insurance company in Jamaica. When I was in Congress, I was Secretary Treasury of the Latin American Caucus. In Puerto Rico also, I was a member of the board of the Government Development Bank of Puerto Rico. Those are a few, more than 50, so I just mentioned those to give you an idea. So I do have experience working with chambers and organizations that have to deal with global markets. And so feel free later on to ask any questions that I can say. What we're trying to do now with Jose Luis is basically try to organize the diaspora together with the Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. This is very important because, you know, we've gone to the diaspora many times asking for help, but we have never shown them that we are here to help them also and that we appreciate what they do. But we are not limiting ourselves only to that. Right now we're working with the Dominican Republic, and probably soon we will be working with Jamaica and many other countries of the Caribbean and Central America.
So I would just like to add the fact that other things we do different. We took the initiative, which takes a bit of self-confidence, I guess, first and foremost, of going to Cuba to teach them entrepreneurship with 7 college professors, PhDs and masters in economic development and entrepreneurship, along with Luis Torrello Parr, past president of the Chamber of Commerce, Salvador Calaf, past president of the Chamber of Commerce, the Puerto Rico's Chamber of Commerce, and Manuel Morales Jr. So they have an understanding of business. Some of them are professors. Manuel Morales is actually a professor, so was Luis Torres at the university. And we went there to find out what's going on, what are the needs, what are the opportunities also in the future when things are viable, but also to generate goodwill, to show a good attitude of good neighbors. We were birds of a feather, right? A las dos alas de un pájaro, as Martí used to say. So why did we go there? Because Puerto Rico needs to know what's going on and how we can help and how we can be a contributing factor, be a catalyst, facilitator for the U.S. U.S. has a diplomatic issue with them, but in diplomacy you learn, you look for common ground, and then you can do soft and backdoor diplomacy to deal with the country in generating information to both sides of how things may work, and you try to work on common denominators of themes and topics of common interest, like it could be immigration, that they already talk about, but it could be economic development. That's a more complicated matter, but we are able to do that because we have that knowledge, that experience. So we're doing it because we can and because we want. But we welcome any questions on this matter. It's a controversial subject, but if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? Who else is going to bring the information to Puerto Rico to make plans? There are plans being done by Cubans in Florida, which don't have a very constructive working relationship at the moment for many reasons, different views and so on. But they like Puerto Ricans, and the past ambassador during the Obama administration told a delegation from Puerto Rico that the Puerto Ricans are to be the natural catalysts and facilitators for this process because they trust us and they like us. For you to do business, you have to know, meaning you have to go visit, you have to talk, you have to share, but they have to trust you. They're not going to do business with you and don't trust you. So there's a trust, basic trust already there from cultural and sports events and whatnot. And we know we can do it. I've been there, I know how it works, and it's just a matter of, and I work in international business for many years, you have to be sensitive to their culture and respectful and realize that everybody's worth a lot. And we don't want to talk down to anybody, and they shouldn't talk down to us. So it's a matter of respect, first and foremost, but also goodwill, and that's what we are doing there. And now within TECO and what they bring to the table is a great group that knows how to do economic development regionally, and they know how to do entrepreneurship and incubators. They have a wonderful program where in Caguas they also have a bank, and they have an agricultural incubator. And you can tell us more about it?
Yes, well, it's good to hear from all of you. You know, I really learned a lot, and it's a lot of reflection in my mind. I have followed a different path. I have been an outlayer all of my time. I have been a rebel all my time. We started in 1985 an organization called Puerto Rico 2000. I don't know if you remember that one. We started that from zero. We said we are going to do something differently. And we did, a lot of friends. And then Willie Miranda Marin, that visionary, he yesterday I made a story about him and Pepe Mendez. I'm going to do a second story today. We went to the Research Triangle in North Carolina to see the model. And then the guy that was there was presenting the model, and they say, well, you know, we have been doing this for 20 years. Now we are getting the recognition. Now we are moving forward. Okay? I said, okay. Then when we went out, Willie embraced me and said, don't even think about that. We have to do it half of the time. So the point I try to make is that we need to move fast. We need to move fast together. You know, we don't have time to do. I mean, we have to learn. We have to focus, which obviously I learned from you. You have been focused, and that's why you grow, because you focus. You didn't say that, but I can notice that you were focused on what you were doing. Is that we have to focus, and that's what we have been doing in Inteco. I remember the first time we went to the public life, somebody says, this is an embeleco. That is not going to last.
In English, embelec.
Embelec, no. Well, then I learned that...
it would mean a mess.
I was a little bit mad, but I learned that no. And innovation is the fine word for embeleco. Innovation is something. Embeleco is an innovation in the Puerto Rican lexic. But then innovation, some work and some don't work. In Embeleco, some do work and some don't work. But the good thing is that we have to stay focused, put the action, put the money where the mouth is, and keep going, never. And I remember Willie's, if I sometimes Willie was a little bit down, which obviously was very little times, Pepe Mendez took over. and then there was no time for that. I mean, we can do a lot of things. You know, sometimes people go and see what Inteco has done in the school and in the projects and all that. And I say, you know what? I'm the guy from Rio Piedras. Willie came from a humble environment. You know, we are not people from Marte. We do something that we have to do, and we do it.
And Oscar, give us it's very important for the audience to know, because you have several programs in Inteco and Municipality of Caguas. You can speak on both.
Yes, we got some,
the school and all of that.
Well, we have a STEM school. We have been able to graduate 565 students. Okay, we had 300. It's a middle class school. It's a top of the line, but middle class. You know, the municipality of Caguas pay half of the budget, and the parents pay half of the budget. Many of the students get scholarships at the schools, universities like Harvard, MIT, Stanford, many of them. We have a business incubator that we have been created about maybe 1,000 jobs, different incubators in 15 years. We are self-sustainable. We don't get any money. We just collect the money from the incubator, and we pay all the expenses, and we pay the municipality for the building. We had a project. We had our failures too. We had a project. We were in charge for 7 years of the design of the train from Caguas to San Juan. We spent a lot of money, a lot of time doing that.
And how about the agricultural incubator? How's that?
I don't work with that one, but that's a very good one.
That's a Caguas project.
They have their own leader there, which is very good, and they really we were in the same incubator. But what I do is somebody comes from the field, I just pass them, and they took over.
There. But you also have a resilient building for
yes, we are finishing a building in a couple of months. It's a 15,000 square feet building in the Plaza of Caguas from federal government. We have received $7 million, so we are building a building that is going to be used for continuation of business after an emergency, catastrophe. For example, a hurricane, earthquake, flooding, fire. Businesses could come there, plug in, and keep moving. We have solar panels, we have water from the ceiling, we have everything available. I'm going to be there for the businesses on the region, and the first month is going to be free. It's a social service to the business community.
One very important thing is those best practices that they have there, we share them with our other operations in the U.S. mainland and our other chambers in Puerto Rico, so that they can learn at the city level, and the chambers can transfer this knowledge or invite folks from the cities to join in the conversation when we have our economic and business development forums or our first annual Puerto Rican Organizations Conference, where they're invited as speakers as well. And essentially, the other thing we're doing is we're connecting the economic development persons. For instance, we have a committee, Economic Development Committee, where we have David Rodriguez from Osceola County, Economic Development Director in Florida. We have Jose Luis Rivera, my son, from Housing in Puerto Rico. We have John Bozek from Invest Puerto Rico. And we have Tito and Dr. Gonzalez Nunez as mentors of that group. And we're bringing other economic development experts from our different chambers in the U.S. to work, share economic development. That's where we came up with the fact sheet, a two-pager from each town in Puerto Rico. There's not a pro forma, a consistent format for them to use to fill out a two-page form to show potential investors or business people interested in the city. Right now, they just show up, and then the mayor starts talking about their family and his history and so on, but they don't have a specific route map of how they're going to develop their economic progress in the town, and what is it that they bring to the table to the prospective investors. There's not such thing. So we created that fact sheet. We used the knowledge from each of these folks, and we're finishing it. And we're also creating a database of Puerto Rican businesses in Florida and in New York. We've already started. The economic development list of contact persons we got from him for the East Coast, we're getting from the Southern group, we're getting from the West. Right now, we're almost at 60%, and we'll finish it, and we'll just need to update it. So we're welcoming any organization that want to help in this regard. We want to have a dashboard, make it easily accessible to contact the Puerto Rican businesses in Florida and New York, because that's normally where people feel more comfortable when they come from an island, connecting with their folks, and secondarily Hispanics too. So that's kind of different things we're doing. Ramon, you wanted to say something?
I think that in tandem, or in short, it's all about leadership. When I had Major General William Miranda Marin, and as probably Hector will remember, we designed Badeco, Cadeco, and most of that economic development plan under Barking International as a favor to him and Juan Leon. And it was really about leadership. And I remember when I had Puerto Rico's first think tank, and he was a member of the board with admirals and generals and a very distinguished board that included lieutenant generals of Puerto Rico in the Senate. And it's execution, and it's really leadership exercise. And what you have of the panel, which I will exclude myself, but it's leadership. When Tito Colorado was, and he still is, a leader, but you know, now from Rotary to the Puerto Rico USA Chamber of Commerce, and you know, in tandem with his experience and age, he still leads. And when Undersecretary and MDDA Executive Cavazo, or LaSalle, or Gustavo, or Luis, or Hector, you know, we lead. And I think that the message is that at Puerto Rico USA Chamber of Commerce, at Central Rio, and each individual organization, it's how you inspire change. And we need to inspire and provide some type of hope for overall Puerto Rican, Latino entrepreneurship. And under the Global Entrepreneurship Congress, you know, we're all about hope. And at the end, it's still leadership.
And follow.
Go back, exercise leadership, and we'll be able to provide.
I agree with you. Badeco is still there, by the way. It's going to be in my building. It's going to be one of my buildings.
Because it was Cadeco, and they changed it to Badeco, so they wouldn't change the name, but it was Corporación de Asistencia y Desarrollo Económico Centro Oriental, and I came up with it while I was bathing. And I remember very well. And then Hector Rivera and Eliseo thought that, oh, let's keep Banco and Badeco. And, you know, it was an economic development administration grant, how it all started. But it was at the very, it was almost able to privatize the first public housing apartments when a very good friend of Cuban descent, Mel Martinez, was heading HUD, and we brought him to Caguas, and it almost happened with Badeco.
So back to leadership. The legislative summit that takes place every year in DC, the first time we were part of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, it was our first year, in fact, we brought the largest delegation and the strongest delegation in terms of experience and know-how in these matters of politics and political, public policy as well. And essentially, the Legislative Summit brings all the chambers that want to show up and visit with congresspeople and senators. So mostly send one person. The ones that were hosting that year the conference was Orlando. They brought 2 members and a sponsor. That was 3. We brought 8. How did we bring 8? Because we agreed beforehand. We wanted to do was just to introduce ourselves and show that we can bring experience to the table of the USACC and to Congress as to the Puerto Rican viewpoint and needs and opportunities. So in doing so, we met with actual senators and congresspersons, not just staffers, which are also important, but we're 8, and within that group we had secretaries of state, former secretaries of state, former secretaries of economic development, former presidents of the government banks, and folks like Elmer Roman, who actually represents the Pentagon when he goes to hearings from Congress. So we purposefully put together a very strong team to show strength, precisely, and show that we had experience, we could bring things to the table. So they would invite us to their activities they had organized, but we organized our own appointments, our own activities with our own agenda beyond what the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce had. I realized that rubbed some people wrong because they thought, you know, we're supposed to be all part of the same little group, a little team, but we think we need to go beyond and carry on our agenda as well. So we collaborate with other organizations, but we do our own things as well. And that's why next year we saw that it was necessary to do our Puerto Rican Legislative Summit. So the first time in history, we're going to have Puerto Ricans from all over the nation and Puerto Rico going to Washington to present our needs and opportunities as a strong force. And we already are counting of our colleagues from New York, meaning the state of New York, where we have some serious, powerful friends that are going to help us get the meetings with Joaquin Jeffries and Nidia Velázquez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Richie Torres. ¿Cómo es que se llama el presidente del Senado en estos momentos? Que se me fue el nombre. El presidente del Senado de Estados Unidos. Schumer. With Chuck Schumer, that's already being coordinated for May or April of next year. So that's kind of the things we do, the kind of vision we have of how we can move interest of our people forward, but also, again, getting appointments, getting contracts, getting actual food on the table. So any other comments you may have?
I'll tell you a couple things kind of on the public-private angle, which I think Jessica brought up, which I think is super important. That's kind of the scrappy stuff that we've had to figure out in a state like South Carolina, where you have to figure things out kind of on your own, as you mentioned. One of the things we're exploring right now, and this comes from experience in venture capital, private equity. Access to capital is a really big topic with Latino businesses right now. And after the work that we've done around venture capital and private equity, I realized that chambers, I started to pull together some connecting dots, right, between the CDFIs, chambers, and said, look, you guys, I think we can have a unique opportunity here to provide some capital to Latino-owned businesses in ways that uniquely chambers can provide. One of the things we're looking at is essentially standing up micro VC funds for these chambers that they can stand up with investing professionals like myself, where I've spent way too much money with attorneys figuring out how to stand up a fund and what to do, what not to do, and what a Delaware Series LLC is, and figuring all these things out, subscription agreements. Chambers, their win is they want to deliver value, capital to their members. We want to deploy capital and close the funding gap from a VC perspective, from a private equity perspective. CDFIs want to deploy capital. There's a huge issue right now inside of the CDFI world. Outside of after the pandemic, ARPA money just kept flowing, and now there's like a ton of CDFI cash that's just sitting out there. And there's some CDFIs who really need to get some money out there. And one of the things that we're looking at is I've designed for chambers a micro VC where for a few $1,000s they can stand up essentially a micro investment vehicle that gets their members invested, cash, actual capital to them. The chambers don't have to worry about developing an investment discipline or a thesis or a due diligence pipeline. We've got that figured out. We know how to do it. We're looking for capital deployment opportunities. They've got members, so we can all win. Everybody can eat. And we're essentially doing the same thing with CDFIs, where essentially they are interested in providing capital, not necessarily taking equity positions. So we're designing a vehicle that is essentially a $0 warrant, where essentially it's a redeemable stock warrant, where I might take a position in the business to start, but at the end of a certain say 2-year window, or when you get to Series A or whatever trigger you want to put in there, that stock redeems at par or at $1 or something back to the original founders. They get to keep the liquidity, so it ends up being, or sorry, the shares. They get liquidity, they avoid dilution, and they get to where they need to be. So there's things like that we've been looking at on the finance side to build, the scrappy programs that you have to build in order to provide the solutions that the market needs, because the proverbial chicken dinners, it just doesn't do it, right? Like, that's just not what we're here to do. I'd rather provide direct service. I'd rather provide something that provides tangible value. And that's one thing at our chamber that we've been looking at and deploying successfully, given that like everybody over the last couple of years, everybody, you almost turn around, at least the experience that I've had is everybody's thinking about starting a fund. Everybody wants to start a VC thing or whatever. Like I always tell people, I don't think you want to start a VC fund. I think you want to help, but I don't know that you want to go through what we went through and spend $250,000 with legal just to figure out what you want to do, and then develop a due diligence discipline, an investment thesis, investing professionals, just to invest what, $100,000? Like you at minimum, you got to deploy $15 million just to make all of that worthwhile. So instead, as I told my CDFI organization in South Carolina, let's partner up. Let's figure out a way to get your members, our members, invested through the same legal vehicle. Y'all can take the credit. I don't care about the credit. Y'all can take the credit. But we figure out how to get the same legal vehicle deployed, the capital in the hands of the right people in a capital efficient way, which ultimately is what everybody's trying to do. So there are vehicles out there that they are unique. There is some, it takes innovation and the idea to develop some embelecos and figure out, some things are going to work, some things are not. And that's part of at least the view that I bring to the table in organizations like this is, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to figure out a good idea is a good idea until it's a bad idea, and I want to find the point at which it's a bad idea, and if it's not, then let's do it.
And Gustavo gives an example, a small example of how it works. Like, for instance, what kind of business, what do they do, how much money they at least you needed to make it sense for you?
Yeah, so when it's like a VC that's investing, you're looking for the big 10x, 100x returns, so it tends to not work. But when I look at it as a VC, I look at it as a pipeline play for myself. I go, these businesses aren't right for me today.
And what is an amount that begins to spike your interest?
So so our fund would on the VC side, we would write checks as little as 75,000 to co-invest. We would lead around with 250. Our max was 500. In the lower middle market side, it's a little different.
And we're going to take some questions from the audience too.
It's bigger check sizes, but with the Hispanic Chamber, for example, I would say 80-85% of the businesses we're talking to, they need 10 grand, right? I can't afford to underwrite due diligence, all that kind of stuff, a $10,000 check, but I can do it if I templatize it and I partner with the chamber to figure it out and then them to service it instead of us servicing the relationship. So you get the best of both worlds. So you can get the proverbial first-time founder that wants to start something maybe in services that may not scale well and is building a Main Street type business. You can deploy capital at a decent clip, and it would still, just to throw a number out there, it would still return like a mid-20s IRR as a lower middle market PE. You're interested in that. It's just not venture returns, but the check sizes are such that they're smaller, so 10K, 25K, that you almost have to cluster them and do them in a way that's a little different in order to make it work. So that's the kind of...
Yeah, there's so much detail that if you're interested, you can also talk to Gustavo in more detail about it. Briefly stated again, the 18th and 19th of November, we have Puerto Ricón. It sounds kind of interesting as a name to remember. It's easy to make it catchy. And again, we're talking about best practices in governance and in building your business. And that's what we're going to do. Economic development is the name of the game of what we do. And we're also going to have a cultural component. So we're bringing some of the major producers in the States for La Parada Puertorriqueña, New York, the 116th Street Festival. Some of these guys have been doing that for 15 years and 39 years. Nick Lugo, the parade in the 116th. One is about 2 million, the other one's 750 to 500,000 people attending. These are big events. La Sanse Orlando, that's 80,000. They're all good friends, by the way. Santos has about 10,000 in West Palm Beach. Nancy Quiñones has the one in Jacksonville with another 10 to 20,000. We're bringing over here so they can meet our artists, our bands, and try to work out giras or tours and make it cost effective. And also they get to meet, producers with artists. They've never had that opportunity before. So that's going to work out very well. And that component is going to bring a lot of salsa y sabor at night. So we'll start on the 17th with a cocktail. And then on Monday, we're also going to have all these bands and producers and meeting and having fun and showing us how they can make it happen. So the New York Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, again, that trade mission with Somos comes in from the 5th to the 12th. This is the first time they're having a local partner with them. They used to come and just bring the governor and the mayor and the elected officials and have perhaps one or two people of elected officials here talk, give a little, a conference or a speech, but not a local partner because there was a difference of perspectives of styles and it just didn't work. So this time, as far as I know, it's the first time to have a local strategic partner. They're giving us a whole day for our seminars and our programs, and that's going to be on the 7th or the 8th of November. We welcome you to. And then to save the date for EPSOCOM PR, the International Trade Fair, that's again going on from the 7th to the 10th of October in Rio Mar, Puerto Rico. And let's see. So we talked about the Cuba program already, the course, and now we're going to take up any questions from the audience who may have, but also please introduce yourself. What is your name? What organization you're with? We can start with the gentleman here. I remember we met yesterday. Go ahead. I'll give you a microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Marlon Joseph.
We have sound.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
My name is Marlon Joseph. I'm from Guyana. And I'm super excited that I participated in this session because every single thing that I need is in this room. So my organization is Together We Win Business Network, which is an umbrella body for small and medium-sized businesses. We've had to adopt the role of a chamber of commerce so that we can look after the interests of our members. And what we do, we establish strategic relationships with other business support organizations and chambers so that our SMEs can, one, share notes, they can explore opportunities for investment, and they can also do trade activities. I also, up to Friday, I was speaking to a colleague about setting up a microcredit facility so that our SMEs can be able to access funding. And I must say that in November, the 5th and 6th, we're having a Chamber conference in Guyana, where we're pulling chambers of commerce in CARICOM and beyond to discuss opportunities affecting trade, to discuss doing business with the respective countries, as well as to have business-to-business meetings. And from a social aspect, what can the business community do to reduce the impact of climate change? This is happening all under the theme Economic Empowerment Assembly and Partnership Summit. I am most happy to meet with everybody and, of course, explore ways in which we can partner so that we can build on resources from the Caribbean as well as resources that are available so that we can grow together.
How do you see there will be opportunities for Puerto Rico with Guyana? Any ideas?
Well, a lot has happened because Guyana is now on the verge of significant development because of the oil and gas sector. We currently have a labor shortage. We currently have challenges affecting or servicing the oil and gas sector as it relates to employment. We have a construction boom. The public service in the government is empty because the oil and gas sector is sucking up all the resources. So there we have persons looking, we need recruitment company, we need manufacturers, we need lots of support so we can develop our country to make it work. So anything that you have in terms of information, in terms of resources, that can work well. We have a local content policy in place which says that anybody who wants to come into Guyana and to set up, they must find a local partner so that they can be able to access the opportunities.
And as we're here talking about incubators, accelerators, and entrepreneurship, do you have a network ecosystem where they all collaborate, like a Echar Palante or Colmena 66, that brings them all together?
Yes.
In Guyana, you do?
Yes. So our network does both. So we have currently 116 members, and we also have active MOUs with Suriname, Trinidad. We're working with Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Brazil, and several other countries. Now, what we're doing, we're making it easy. So let us say you want to get to Suriname or Trinidad. We already have an agreement. So it becomes one general network that makes it easy. We provide a low-barrier platform for persons to access trade and information and set up business within the respective countries.
Good. So we'll talk later about your event and this event.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question.
Please tell us your name and
Yeah,
what
of
organization you're with.
My name is Aliana Colon. I'm a startup executive at Parallel 18. And that is a program that is part of the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust. Mostly we help international startups and local startups to provide them with mentorship, funding, and all the needs so they can scale here in Puerto Rico or international. And my question mostly is, right now we have a P18, that is an accelerator program, and mostly we receive a startup from international countries. And one of the challenges for them is to understand the trade barriers or the entry barriers to countries, so they can, of course, commercialize their products. And like my question is there is a database so they can enter to understand the different barriers that are in different countries, mostly in Latin America, or the main thing is for them to go into the place so they can explore the culture and to understand then how to commercialize their services.
UNTACD under the United Nations has that database, and that's the Trade organization under the UN. And at Atlantic, we signed for the first time an agreement with the United Nations in Puerto Rico, and it'll take some time, but you can access through the UNTACD. In addition, you need to consider, and I'm sure that Congressman Colorado can provide some feedback, but each individual country will have its own unique
But the U.S. Trade
cultural
Office,
issues. But
Tito,
the
I'm sure you know.
UNTACD, and yes,
Yes,
under
US Trade
DOC,
Office.
the U.S. Trade Office is supposed to provide.
They have a synopsis, a summary on each country and the economic profile. Tito, you perhaps remember U.S. Trade Office?
Yes, obviously through the U.S. Embassies and different places, but we are trying to do something, and we'll get in contact with you, because we're trying to do something about getting much closer to the islands in the Caribbean and to Central America. Obviously, we say the islands in the Caribbean, but clearly we include Guyana. Now, I have been, in my prior life, I worked very closely with the Caribbean for many years. And I think it is important for Puerto Rico to understand what is happening in each one of the islands, where they come from, in the sense of they're very similar to us, in the sense of the culture. I remember once we had the Prime Minister of Curaçao brought a group of dancers, musicians, and it happened that the difference between us and them was that they spoke Dutch and we spoke Spanish, but the music in many cases was exactly the same, except that the ones dancing it in Puerto Rico were probably sort of white, and the ones in Curaçao were sort of black. But you'll be amazed how closely our cultures are, be it in French, Dutch, whatever, Spanish or English. And so I think, but people don't know that unless you go there. So that's what I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to get an organization not too much organized, but really just to be able to visit the countries, see what they learn from them. We're not going to tell them what to do. We're going to see what their needs are. How can we improve what we're doing from what they are doing? How can we help them improve? But the most important thing, and I think somebody mentioned it before, is we have to get together and get to know each other. Because, when you talk about economics is not something that happens by a miracle unless you have oil or something like that. But basically it happens because two persons get together. And then 3 and 4 and 5. And it's more than just, we in Puerto Rico, I know, and in many countries in the Caribbean, we like to, anything is a debate. Anything that we do, you have an opinion, I have another opinion. But the thing is, I say, the only way to get where you want to go is sharing and then deciding, even it may not be the way you think, it may not be the other one, is something in between, but together you can do anything. And then having in each country the same, but in the area, I know the islands in the Caribbean, I know them well. And I started talking and giving speeches in CARICOM 40 years ago. And it hasn't changed much.
Yolanda,
Why?
you wanted to add?
It hasn't changed much because, again, they don't work together. Each one is thinking about each one of them. So we have to be part of that. And we have to understand that, for example, for Puerto Rico, when we talk about economic development, it doesn't have anything to do if you're independent state or Commonwealth or whatever. You know, so I think it is important. I think it is important that we go and we visit our friends, we become more closer to them, we understand, and that means business for you and for any other group.
I know Luis has to leave, and so Yolanda wanted to say something real quick, and then we go to Luis.
Really quick, before we adjourn, and I know that we are running out of time, but I wanted to bring a perspective that chambers of commerce are bringing economic development, and it is uniting people to make business better. And from my perspective, being in the board and being a participant of different activities, what I have found is that the Chamber of Commerce is providing me the foundation for connections and look for opportunities that I haven't looked before and look for innovation. And that's something that is really relevant to Puerto Rico and to every country. And just I wanted to highlight before we adjourn the benefit of being in a Chamber of Commerce and look for all these connections that make us better together.
Thank you. You have, gentleman, had a question?
Yes. Just going to a point, your question. You have to check the trade agreements that we have to operate. Remember that we are part of the U.S. I have conference of seminar of how to export and the things you have to consider. By the way, one of them I brought in Cuba for the guys from Cuba just 3 weeks ago. Well, first you have to check the trade agreements that has the U.S. Eso es importante. Second, as Tito said, you have to contact the Department of Commerce of the U.S. that normally they are in the U.S. Embassy. And third is just to enter in the web of that country that you want to do business and check what are the rules. Just I answered your question.
And when I mentioned United States Trade Office, they have a paper on each country, but they also will have the embassy put out a white paper on your specific industry if there is not such information already available.
And they have, and I worked for years with that. That's what I answer, you know. And they have the gold pass that you can coordinate with the Department of Commerce and the embassy, and they coordinate all the meetings you will need according to the industry you want to cover in your export. Okay.
We facilitate that for states in the U.S. So yeah.
Yeah. Let me say something. I do believe that it's important through the commercial attaché in the embassies. Yeah, you should go and talk to them. That is important. But I think it's even more important for you to get a hold of the local organizations. The American embassy will give you some ideas, but I did not depend much on the American embassy. I would go there many times just to tell them what I was doing, and it's good to contact them, but I think, you know, sometimes with people that you know, you can even do much more directly. But I always went to the embassy. Why? Because, you know, they can tell you what their interest is as U.S. of A. But you go there and then you say, okay, this is what I can do, where they can help me, and then go directly to the Chamber of Commerce, to the Rotary Club, whatever.
Well, and the Department of Commerce Embassy, they coordinate the meetings you need. Yes. Okay, but in addition, with the Chamber of Commerce, I was the only Puerto Rican that had been a member of the AmChams, okay? The AmChams are the Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the, outside the U.S. territory. And I was an exception that they wanted I be in the board, and that's part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Again, but you can also use the AmChams of those countries, Latin American or Europe or wherever. There is the whole world, the AmChams. That's another source that you may have.
And on the in the AmChams, you will find Puerto Ricans in all of them. In every AmCham, there's a Puerto Rican.
I know we have to excuse Yolanda, but we have the gentleman with a question. Yolanda, thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. It's a quick question, very specific. Okay, very specific question. I am from Ecuador. We are not an island, but we have Galapagos Islands. And I am investor. I'm the Gen Delegate for my country. I am an investor, an angel investor. We just invested in a company that is making clothes for bad clothes and everything using sustainable materials. And we're already working with Dominican Republic because we work with islands that have a lot of tourism, and we help to prevent destruction of ecosystem. We did learn how to do that from Galapagos Islands. We want to do in Dominican Republic, and we would love to do it with Puerto Rico. And the question is how an Ecuadorian entrepreneurship could have a one-stop shop or a point of contact to begin doing business in Puerto Rico.
Well, first you have to register in the Department of State of Puerto Rico. If you have an entity from the Ecuador, then you will enter as a foreign entity. You have to check if it's better to have the foreign entity that you have, the legal entity that you have in Ecuador, register in Puerto Rico, or to open a new entity in Puerto Rico. But if you are just going to export, just you will not have presence in Puerto Rico, okay? Then you don't have to tax in Puerto Rico. That's different. Just pay the sales tax. That here is another name. Okay?
We would like to begin doing business, and then Puerto Rico could be the hub for other. But first, exports.
And you have an excellent point if you use Puerto Rico to export, because you have an exemptions for companies under Law 60. That was the old Law 20. Okay, now it was covered by Law 60. You can establish a company in Puerto Rico, and if you export, you will pay just 4% income tax with another benefit of property tax and whatever, and volume of business. Then you will have a lot of benefit if you establish the operation in Puerto Rico and export anyway. Any place, any place, maybe US, maybe in Latin America and the Caribbean, you are exporting and you have that incentives in Puerto Rico.
Which would be the first point of contact?
What would you be exporting?
Clothes.
Clothes. Okay. And where would you manufacture them?
It's manufactured, but women's in Ecuador. But we could export also the model and maybe to manufacture it here.
Okay, it is expensive, obviously, in Puerto Rico, much more than in Ecuador.
Yes. To manufacture in Puerto
Rico. If you produce it in Puerto Rico, then you will have also some federal benefits. You could do part of it in Puerto Rico, part in Ecuador. It depends. We used to do that, and we're still doing some of the companies.
The thing is that we use technology that we can use materials that are recycled.
Recyclable.
Yes.
Okay.
For doing those clothes and design. This is not a factory what we export. It's the technology and the design. And the concept of using this to promote conservation of ecosystems.
If you manufacture in Puerto Rico, that will label that made in the US. Okay? And again, anything we can talk after this.
You can consult with him. But also Colmena 66. You can go to their website. It says how to establish business in Puerto Rico. Colmena 66.
And for first appointments with customers, potential customers, it's a Chamber of Commerce?
Nah, that's really is not Chamber or whatever. You have... You have to contact
Business partners.
business partners,
Yes,
or
yes.
business professionals,
Advisors, yeah.
like I am not selling myself or my company,
Like
but
you.
like we. Yeah.
Business advisors, yeah.
Talk to you later. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions? We're good? Well, thanks to our panel and thanks to our audience, and look forward to seeing if we can be of service to you at any point. And much success in your countries, and love to talk more about it if you'd like to talk with our panel on any of the matters we presented today. Thank you again.